good nuggets in there. And there's an element of this geographic game where right now, as you mentioned, there's a concentration in a few cities around on the planet, frankly, like around the world, for startup. Oh, yes. For startups, and the idea that increasingly that innovation can happen almost anywhere. And in fact, if we're doing the Internet of Everything, then there's a lot of big factories around the world. You can go to work with those companies where they are. Do you see? I mean, now GE is an interesting case study where they're moving, not all their factories and whatnot, but they're moving to find the startup ecosystem. That was one of the things they cited as the reason they love Boston, is the innovation and the opportunity to work with innovators and partner. Do you see that as a trend, or you talk to me a little bit about your advice for the corporations, and then maybe that one piece specifically on whether everybody moves towards the startups, or the startups move towards the corporations?
I think it'll be both. The startups will become, they'll understand, again, depends on what they're trying to accomplish, but they're going after some of these third wave opportunities. You mentioned the African proverb, you want to go quickly, you go alone. If you want to go far, you must go together. Partnership is going to be a really big deal in the third wave, just as it was in the first wave. We would never have been successful at AOL. The internet never would have been commercialized if it hadn't been for partnerships. Nobody could do it alone. PC companies did part of it, the software companies did part of it, the network companies did part of it, the content companies did part of it, the commerce companies did part of it, everybody did part of it, and it got knit together through kind of a tapestry of alliances, and that's why the internet is now part of our everyday life, and that dynamic will become important again in this third wave. So that aspect of partnerships is important, and if people start looking at some of these issues, yes, if you can create an interesting health and wellness app and drop it in the app store and get a lot of people to use it, awesome. But the real revolution in health will have something to do with working with doctors and working with hospitals, not just working with apps. And similarly, there's a lot of interesting things in learning. You learn different learning apps, language, other things, and a lot of them are terrific. But the real revolution in education is going to become working with teachers, like in classrooms and universities. That's where it's going to happen. And so engaging with those people is what's going to drive that revolution. And so that's why these partners are going to become more important. And it's going to, entrepreneurs will figure that out and start seeking those partners. Large organizations, both the companies and different kinds of organizations, will figure that out. And there'll be this dance, this co-opetition dance that will become defining for this, this third wave. I also want to build on what the governor said. This issue of policy, this issue of government, is going to be a big deal in the third wave. I understand, because I've been talking about this stuff for a while, that when I talk about this, either people's eyes glaze over, or they just get angry. I don't like government. The government slows me down. Government isn't agile. Government does stupid things. I don't like the regulations. I wish there was no government. As Duvall said, there's got to be a government that makes sure, our kids, when they go to school, don't eat food that's going to make them sick. And there's going to be government that's going to make sure that, we get on a plane, it's not going to crash, or drone's not going to slam into our playground, and or that the drugs we take aren't going to kill us. This is, and so get used to it. And if you just want to create a bunch of apps, go for it. But if you actually want to change the world, you've got to engage with partners. You've got to engage with government. And it's going to be harder, yes. But who said it? JFK said when he put a man on the moon, we're not going to do it because it's easy. We're going to do it because it's hard. So do it. But engage and recognize it's going to require that engagement with partners, which is hard. It's going to require engagement on policy with government, which is hard. It's going to require more perseverance. It's not going to be an overnight success. Bummer. But if you want to change the world, it's going to be hard. And it's going to require more perseverance. And that's, I think, the spirit that people need to bring to this third wave. Not everybody will. I get that. We don't need everybody to. We just need a few who are willing to land the man on the moon in terms of trying to change the world in whatever way they particularly want to do it. And we need to make sure that opportunity is, as I said earlier, available to all. Last point on this regional issue, everybody kind of looks at the world as a snapshot, not a movie. They're just kind of focused on what's happening right now. I'm not a great historian, but I do know this. I do know that 75 years ago, Silicon Valley was an apple orchard. I also know that 75 years ago, Detroit was Silicon Valley. It was the hottest technology innovation city in the country. When the car, not the PC, not the internet, was the hot technology of the day. Detroit was a rocket. People were flocking to it. Schools were being built, roads were being built, houses were being built. Crazy success. A half a century later, Detroit has lost 60% of its population and went bankrupt. And it was Silicon Valley. So things go up and things go down. And nothing is locked. And I'm not saying Silicon Valley is going to be Detroit. Every time I say, oh, you're thinking that. No, I'm not saying that. I think Silicon Valley is well positioned to do well. I think Detroit's going to rise. And some of the things happening in downtown areas is important. But I also think in ag tech, Louisville's going to rise, and St. Louis is going to rise, and in health tech, Nashville's going to rise, and Madison's going to rise. And you know, if you just kind of go through each of these different sectors, there are real reasons, structural reasons why these cities have some advantage. Boston is unusually advantaged, and the governor talked about some of the benefits. My view is in the second wave, Boston, as a community, got too cautious, got too risk-averse. Thought some of the ideas were just too crazy. And that's when Silicon Valley said, we're going for it. That's just my view. And it needs to get that fighting spirit back again. It's got all the talent, all the access to capital, everything. It just is a little bit more of this. What kind of time talked to you about the failure? Not just about failure, that's a key part of it. It's also about willing to swing for the fences. Babe Ruth was the home run king. Babe Ruth was also the strikeout king. And if every time he'd gone up to bat, he bunted or settled for first base, he wouldn't be Babe Ruth. And sometimes Boston maybe is, bunting's a little too strong, but double's fine. Take it double all day. I don't want to risk that. I don't want to invest all our profits in the next thing. And I remember, last time I made two companies that, when I was a kid, were the iconic companies that defined photography. Kodak and Polaroid. One not too far from here, the other not that far from here. Both are gone. And they were the leaders. And Kodak actually invented digital photography. It wasn't like they were caught, they invented it. They invented it. But then the people leading it said, that's gonna happen like 18, 20 years from now. Meanwhile, we're gonna sell a lot of paper, a lot of chemicals, make a lot of money. And they didn't really invest. And they went bankrupt. And photography is now the hottest thing, and people have little cameras, and when you do on your camera, take a picture and look at it, that's called Polaroid. That's what Polaroid was. See it instantly. So you had the most innovative photography company here, and now like Instagram and Snapchat and this week Facebook Live. They're basically becoming like the next generation thing. So having that fearlessness, having that sense of possibility, going for it, even though sometimes you'll strike out, even though sometimes you'll fail, but that doesn't mean you're a failure, that just means that idea didn't work. That's how drugs are developed. Like the scientists on the labs, they fail like 1,000 times. 1,001, it's like, oh, cool. Lipitor or whatever the drug that comes from failure. This didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work. That worked. And communities, it's not just companies, it's communities need to rally around it. And I would just suggest to this community, which is better positioned, you're not riding to the rest, you've risen. So you could be just complacent. You say, hey, 75% of capital goes to the 3 states, we're one of them. Awesome. Pop the champagne. I would suggest that if you want to kind of rise even further and be even more of a leader in the third wave, like you were in the first wave, this issue of fearlessness and pushing exactly what the governor's saying is critical.